along the side of the road here. So this amps up the danger factor here. Anybody just crossing the street, walking their dog, out with their kids is in danger here. Looks like he's stopping. He's stopping. Where is he? This is Telfair Avenue?
Telfair Avenue. Telfair Avenue
block.
Coming to a stop here. That is the 9700 block of Telfair. We've got some folks that are right across the street, whether they know it almost looked like they were anticipating him. I did not see. We had an obstructed view there with that tree. It looked like he was about to stop. So whether he dropped somebody off or just took a pause, I can't confirm at this point. But what I did see were some folks in the front yard of a home right across from where he stopped, and it almost looked like they were anticipating his arrival. That's speculation on my part, but they certainly seem to be, out front, either communicating with him or waiting for him, whether they were listening to it or watching it, whatever the case may be. In any event, you can see more smoke coming from this front-wheel drive Toyota Avalon as he continues to zigzag his way through here, picking up speed once again, and now coming westbound on Osborne Street is where we are, just about a mile west of Whiteman Airport.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll check back with you in a minute. We'll keep your picture up as we talk to Bruce Thomas. He's a law enforcement expert, and he joins us now on the phone. Bruce, are you with us? And tell us what you think about what you're seeing.
Oh, my God.
Yes, I am, Mark and Michelle. Well, Chris is 100% correct. This is a pursuit that has just become so dangerous for the general public, the officers, that they've had to cancel. The crime is not outweigh pursuit. It is just a dangerous event.
Wow. Well, it certainly is. We're watching him now. He's crossing over the center line on Haddon Avenue. This is a residential street in Pacoima. He should be going, 25, maybe 30 miles an hour, and he's clearly going much faster than that based on what we're able to tell. And anybody out there is at risk now, and now he's got some cross traffic here. This is really dangerous. This time of day, you got people out, traffic is heavy. There's all these different factors that are involved. When the possibility exists that it's in a more of a residential area, does that factor into why they would perhaps call off a pursuit?
Yeah, very much so, Mark. Some of the, you have to give certain factors that are needed at pursuit: speed, road conditions, direction of travel, the validity for the pursuit. In this case, the man with the gun. Well, you had two people possibly leave the vehicle. You have one left. So they go with the assumption that he's armed and still dangerous, but his driving is more dangerous. And so they will back off, go into tracking mode helicopter, and they're just put these limitations on this guy. And as Chris said, hopefully the pressure comes off of him and he slows down. But in this case, we're not seeing that at all.
Yeah, it's really frightening to see him go down these residential streets at such a high rate of speed. Bruce, we're getting some dropouts with your audio, so let's quickly check back in with Chris Christie, who's up there in Air 7. Chris, can you hear us right now?
Hey there, Michelle, back with you, and it sounds like they are considering re-engaging the pursuit once again. Again, keeping an eye on this person's driving. They've made a decision that it might be worthwhile to get units back in a position to try and get him off the road. Now, again, as time passes, he's burning through fuel, and nobody knows how much fuel is on board, but the vehicle is registered to an address, I believe, here in the valley, not too far from here. So we'll continue to keep an eye from above. Looks like he's actually stopping for this particular turn. It's at looks like he's got the maybe a green left arrow, making a turn with that vehicle there, but driving a little bit slower here. We'll see if he kind of swerves around this person or whether he decides to bail. At one point, you saw a minute ago, he pulled behind that tree, and we were wondering whether he dropped somebody off. It actually looks like the driver's side door popped open for just a second. He was considering getting out of the vehicle and then had a second thought, shut the door, and kept on going. Throughout this entire time, for the last, I would say for the better part of the last 10 minutes now, he really hasn't been running from any ground units. They gave it up a little while ago. The airship's continuing to follow from above, and so it does look like actually the helicopter is backing off now as well. So they may have made a decision to just let this guy go. We had word there for just a second that there was some contemplation about maybe re-engaging, but it looks like they are backing off completely. And, if you look at it for the last couple of minutes at least, I guess you would say he's driving somewhat manageable, not nearly as erratic as he was at some points, but we will continue to keep an eye and see what he does.
Well, the thing is, it's unpredictable because he goes like this for a little while, and then you see him now.
He's oncoming lanes of traffic.
He's driving into the oncoming lanes. Sometimes he'll act, fairly moderate, I suppose, is the best way to put it. And other times he just speeds up, drives into oncoming traffic, and does all kinds of crazy things. And there's no kind of indicator about what is causing him to do that because the police haven't been directly behind him for much of the last 15 minutes or so. It's hard to predict, and so I would think that would factor into whether they might want to re-engage.
Their calculus, especially for LAPD, has changed over time. It's been a very busy year with police pursuits. Earlier in the year, we saw a string of dangerous pursuits where people got hurt, quite frankly, and they had to look in the mirror and really reevaluate their policies. Now, whether there's been any specific policy changes, I can't speak to that. To be honest with you, I have spoken to different sources, but, from my observation, they have really modified their tactics quite a bit in terms of their decision-making, the things that they take into consideration, whether to put it in tracking mode, in and out of pursuit mode. We hear a lot more surveillance calls as they follow from above a lot of times, or they'll keep their distance on the ground and try to, they'll put it in pursuit, keep it in pursuit for a short distance. If they can put some pressure on and he can stop the vehicle and somebody will jump out, they'll bail. We see all different kinds of things now, but the pursuits are just not lasting as long as they have, as long as we're used to seeing. This is already one of the longer pursuits. And I'm just talking about the time that it was actually in pursuit mode. Is a little bit longer than we've seen in recent months throughout the summer. But you can see it looks like this suspect is now back in this residential neighborhood, continuing in the same part of the San Fernando Valley. And again, LAPD certainly monitoring this, but their decision-making is up in the air at this point.
It's interesting. There have been a bunch of people kind of out along the street. He's off of Oneida Boulevard. Now he's back on Van Nuys. He's kind of circled the block there, but I wonder if this is a neighborhood that is very familiar to him. Of course, this is kind of near where the pursuit began, so it would make sense. But I wonder if that was his street, because it seemed like there were a lot of people specifically on that street. Let's take a look at this video from earlier. This was a little while ago where we saw one of the suspects bail out of the car, one of the passengers, and then a little bit later, Michelle, we saw it happen again.
Yeah, this was, like you said, about 5:46, a little bit before 6 o'clock, where the second one got out, and then you saw the smoke coming out from underneath the front of the car. And we've seen that several times with this car, once on the right and another time on the left. And then you'll see here from earlier the LAPD unit pulling right up, and then the officers getting out with their guns drawn. But then traffic starts moving again, and the pursuit continued. The pursuit has been in tracking mode now for, I would say, like 5-10 minutes now, Chris?
Yeah, and they actually do have the helicopter back in position here. So we thought the helicopter might be backing off, but now we could see. Stand by 1 second, Jay. It does look like that helicopter is right above him once again. So, by the way, that helicopter, the LAPD airships fly relatively low, much lower than we do up here in Air 7. You can clearly hear that helicopter right over you. If he's got that window open, which he does, he can certainly hear that helicopter right above him as they continue to track this suspect. There is consideration once again of maybe picking up the pursuit with units on the ground. So this is something that they've been discussing throughout the time that we've been on the air here. But as you mentioned, Michelle, no sign of law enforcement on the ground for, I would say, at least a solid 12 to 15 minutes now.
All right. Well, we're watching him now going through this residential neighborhood. There's somebody on a bicycle.
By a bicycle.
This is what I'm talking about. When he goes through a residential neighborhood like this, and he's being reckless, and he's speeding. Right now, he's not speeding, but he has certainly been, and he's shown some really reckless moves. A lot of people are put at risk. The question that they have to weigh with the pursuing officers is whether being directly behind him makes him speed up more. They're not behind him now. Look at him flying now. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're talking about. He's on Terabella Street, and look at that. He is narrowly missing other vehicles. Just went under the freeway bridge there, and there he goes. Look at him flying down this street. And, you know, this is 6:12 in the evening. There's a lot of traffic out there. There are a lot of people walking around. He's blowing through that intersection.
Freeway, I should say. He just went through that red light there. That's Arleta Avenue. He just went under the 5 freeway a minute ago, continuing now westbound on Tarabella Street. And at speeds of 60 to 70 miles per hour on these surface streets, you've got to wonder, again, whether they are going to pick up this pursuit. Now, he did fly by an LAPD officer as he made his way under the 5 freeway there. But as far as we could tell, that officer did not have the lights and sirens on, and at this point, still not pursuing the suspect. But I can confirm that the airship is still overhead.
Okay, continuing to watch these live pictures from Air 7 HD on Pierce Street at Beachy Avenue in Arleta. The suspect continuing to drive at a very dangerous rate of speed, making a lot of erratic moves. We're seeing him going down a street with speed bumps once again. But as we've seen in the past, that hasn't really helped bring the speeds down all that much. Now he is slowing down as he prepares to make a right turn into this intersection here. We're now on Van Nuys Boulevard. And it's believed that it's probably just the driver at this point. In early reports where there are 3 people on board, we saw 2 people get out. And Chris, from that one shot you had from a different angle, we were kind of looking straight into the driver's front seat. It didn't look like there was anyone else inside that car unless there's someone in the back seat kind of lying down and hiding.
Yeah, looks like it's just the driver. Those rear windows very heavily tinted here as we continue northbound off of Van Nuys Boulevard onto Arleta Avenue. Again, northbound. At one point earlier in this pursuit, he was tossing, reportedly, I should say, we can't confirm this independently, but reportedly tossing narcotics out of the vehicle. And again, the original one here was a suspect with a gun. So just some more background info. But you can see he's continuing to drive relatively aggressively. At one point there a moment ago, as you saw, he went right by that bicyclist and right back into oncoming lanes of traffic. So really not showing any respect for the rules of the road still, despite the fact that he doesn't really have anybody behind him. As far as we could tell, still only those airships overhead, or that one airship, I should say, that's still left up in the air above him. That's an LAPD airship continuing to call the shots as they contemplate whether or not to pick up this pursuit once again. So they are watching this along with us and making real-time decisions, calculating the risk to the public here.
Keeping an eye on this, they're noticing that he's kind of circling a neighborhood, Arleta, Pacoima area, Sun Valley, parts of Sun Valley as well. That's kind of where he has spent the bulk of his time, if you will, during this pursuit. And he has been on some of the same streets a number of times. And if they're looking at possibilities for choke points and or a place to lay down a spike strip, they have to be taking that into consideration as well. He's now going through that Chevron station, going to cut through. Now he's
through a gas station.
Yeah,
we're in Pacoima, Laurel Canyon southbound, and they've just given the go-ahead to re-engage. There was an LAPD Explorer. He's making that U-turn. They're going to get other units into position, but that Explorer, or perhaps one of these guys, is going to be the next primary unit in pursuit here. But we just counted 3 LAPD black and whites, all 3 making the U-turn here on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, and they are going to pick up this pursuit once again. That go-ahead was just given a few seconds ago. Now southbound on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. We'll see what he does at this intersection here. He's got a red light blowing right through the red light, and that's where those units on the ground have to decide whether they can make that safe transition through that red light with him, with their lights and sirens blaring here in Pacoima. Traffic a little heavy there on the northbound side of Laurel Canyon, but he's got plenty of room to play with on the southbound side, and he is using all of it at 90 miles per hour. Southbound on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, they are now forced to disengage again. They've just decided to back off once again, and that is a clear indication, a decision that was purely based on the speed there. They just couldn't keep up with him. All 3 of those units made the U-turn. They had given the go-ahead to continue the pursuit southbound on Laurel Canyon, and he put the pedal to the metal, upwards of 95 miles per hour on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. The watch commander said, no way, pull back, disengage. They 10-22'd it for the time being. They are canceling this pursuit once again, but if they find an opportunity, which they are continuing to follow from above, but if they can find an opportunity to stop him on the ground, I would expect this could be a delicate balancing act for as long as he's got gas in the tank.
Mm-hmm. And
Another
now he's
big
turning
move
into
here.
a business. Look at this pedestrian right there. Every time he steps on the gas, and we can't see what's ahead of him. We can't see what's out of frame until it gets into frame, but it just gives me chills. He's in the parking lot of a Target store. Imagine a Target store this time of day on a Monday. There's a lot of people there doing their shopping, and he's passing through that store parking lot at a high rate of speed, now getting back onto the street there. He's back. Is this Laurel Canyon he's back on?
Back on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, and at this point, I think it's safe to say that he is kind of making this up as he goes along. I don't see this person having a clear destination in mind, but
gosh.
you can't look
What
at that.
is
Somebody
this
communicating with him there. Somebody was communicating. You've got other folks with their cell phones out. And he is well known in this neighborhood. You could tell. And I got that impression a few blocks away from here earlier in this pursuit when he pulled on, almost decided to get out of the vehicle. There were folks waiting in a front yard. Now you see more people looking out for this pursuit. They're watching on social media. They're sharing the photos with their friends. And word is getting around here that this guy is running from the cops here in Pacoima. For the bulk of this pursuit, we've been in the Pacoima, North Hollywood area between here and there, but really mostly in Pacoima for the most part. This is all where it started in LAPD's Foothill jurisdiction. Again, though, continuing 70 miles per hour northbound on Branford Street as he continues to drive what I would describe as aimlessly through this part of the valley.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, Chris, if he drives by that large group of people that did seem to be gathered because of this individual going by. On the right side, you're seeing video from earlier where he had a really close call with a person on a bicycle. We have Bruce Thomas back on the phone with us, law enforcement expert. Bruce, can you tell us about this on and off calling of the pursuit and why is it so difficult, or why it is so difficult for officers to make this decision tonight, whether to stick with it or back off?
Well, anytime you have a pursuit, the watch commander is asking for certain things. Pursuits are governed by policies and procedures. Those policies and procedures are for the safety of the officers, the general public, and believe it or not, the suspect. So in this case, he has reached thresholds which they deem unsafe.
Mm-hmm. And does the fact that he seems to kind of randomly speed up, starts to drive erratically at random times, would that factor into whether or not they might want to re-engage? If they can determine that maybe their presence isn't a factor necessarily, or not as much as a factor in whether this guy drives crazy, would that be
Yeah,
something?
Mark, when he slows down to re-engage because the speeds are safe and the general public is not at risk to that degree. However, when he speeds up and he's broken over 100 miles an hour in this pursuit, that's too dangerous. And no matter whatever grade 1 felony you're chasing, it's not worth the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Do the officers making another move into a parking lot here, hopefully continuing on. Yes, he is, and making a right turn. It looks like getting back on the streets. Bruce, more smoke coming from that car. Look at that. We've seen that time and time again from the front tires, the smoke coming out. The car may be becoming more disabled. It's happening more frequently, it seems. And we're getting a closer look inside the car now. You can see it is the driver. There's no passenger sitting to the right. And we're not sure if there's anyone in the back seat, but...
Does he have something in his hand? I can see his right hand. It's a cell phone?
It looks like a cell phone. It looks like a cell phone from up here.
Okay.
We know he's believed to be armed, but I believe that I saw the reflection of a cell phone in his right hand there.
Okay. Well, whenever this ends, he better have his hands empty when he gets out of that vehicle, because he is putting himself and the lives of officers at risk. And this is what we were talking about. Bruce Thomas, he's flying down Laurel Canyon Boulevard again. It is a difficult decision. It's a difficult process of deciding whether or not to re-engage, and also to get people in position to do that when he's moving around erratically. I would assume when you're not directly engaged, they're kind of paralleling him. They're not like just going off and patrolling their normal patrol duties after that. They must be fairly close by. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mark. What they're doing is since he seems to be in the Pacoima or Leader area and it has a little bit of a pattern, they're flooding those neighborhoods with patrol cars. They're asking for other stations, not just Foothill, but maybe Mission, Van Nuys on the north end, to send units into the area. So when this pursuit does become the terminus point, they can set up a containment very quickly and get their suspect if he does foot bail.
And also render aid if needed, right? I mean, there's a high probability of him either hitting somebody in a car or a pedestrian, or as we saw earlier, even someone on a bicycle.
Yeah, very much, Michelle. One of the things that came out a couple of years ago was another print media did a story on pursuits, and unfortunately, LAPD came out the lead in uninvolved third-party accidents, meaning they're chasing somebody in a pursuit, he crashes or causes other accidents. And so, as Chris said, in a very litigious society, they have deep pockets and people will end up suing the chasing agency.
And LAPD would have more pursuits because it's the biggest agency in town, so you would guess that they would have more of these sorts of crashes. I mean, that's just going to happen. So I guess you do have an exposure there, and that has to be part of the calculus here. It can't just be about getting somebody and bringing them to justice. They have to think about, whether there's a liability that's an undue risk for a suspect that, whether if it's not a super dangerous felony, I suppose. But
yeah, and Mark, you're on the right track. And one of the things too is being a watch commander and having managed pursuits is, I'm not worried about the litigious part of it, but I am worried about the officer's safety, the general public's safety. That outweighs the pursuit.
Bruce, thank you. As we continue to watch live pictures on the left, video from earlier on the right, we just saw him going past that large crowd that's gathered. There you see it. It's unclear if they may know the person who's driving, but we have seen that before with pursuits where people who know the individual have been in contact with him or her on the cell phone, and then in an attempt to get that person to stop and give up, they come out. But we're not sure if that was the case there, but there was a large crowd. I don't know what else to say about it.
This guy's clearly on his phone, too. We saw a pretty tight shot of him for a time there while he was on his cell phone very clearly. So whoever he's talking with, and the word gets out. It's on all the stations at this point. It's on social media. It's pretty much everywhere. And as an alert to people in this neighborhood, he has come within inches of hitting other vehicles. He has come within feet of hitting pedestrians and a bicyclist. That's just the stuff that we know about directly and have seen directly. So this is not something to be taken lightly. This is something to be concerned about if you're in the neighborhood and to be wary about, because there have been 2 people who have foot bailed and at least 1 more that is behind the wheel. I hope we have the right car. We got the right car, Chris?
Yeah, that's him right there. As you mentioned, he has been on the cell phone for the last couple of minutes. Not sure if he's still on that call, but back underneath the 5 freeway, and you're noticing, if you're watching along with our SkyMap 7 locator near the top of your screen, we are retracing the steps of this pursuit, street by street, really circling the same exact neighborhood. And if there was any doubt where he was going to be spending the night tonight, I can now tell you that he is reportedly a wanted parolee at large. So they already know who this suspect is. They've got the 411 on this driver, and for that may also be what's playing into their decision making. At this point, hopefully he slows down, goes through as much gas as possible. Certainly seems, from my vantage point, that he is just enjoying the joyride at this point. His final moments of freedom for the day until they eventually catch up with him. So it's a little bit of a game of cat and mouse. LAPD knows who he is. He clearly knows that they're after him. He knows how this is all going to end up. Not a lot of surprises here. You just want to see him driving as slow as safely as possible until he finally decides to give it up. The real risk, the real scare comes when he starts speeding up and driving really, really erratically and coming close to pedestrians and bicyclists and doing stupid things like driving the wrong way on major thoroughfares here. So hopefully, if he continues to obey some of these lights, or even at a slow pace, there's a black and white right behind him. Not sure if his lights are on there, but at last check, we were still in tracking mode.
Oh,
you know, look at that. He saw that. He saw that unit. He saw that unit, and once again, put the pedal to the metal, back 95 miles per hour. So this is a pattern that they've established with this guy. They are going to try and keep this out of pursuit mode for as long as they can. If there was any intention of putting this back in pursuit mode, it went away the minute he crossed that 90 mile per hour mark through this intersection, continuing now southbound on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, picking up steam once again and really amping things up. You know, just when we thought that this might be a little bit more of a manageable situation for the LAPD to hopefully see this guy run out of gas, he is continuing with the very aggressive driving, really fast speeds on surface streets here in Pacoima, continuing at a relatively fast clip here with units in position, or at least in the vicinity. As Bruce mentioned, they are going to flood the zone with officers from the North Hollywood Division as well as the Foothill Division, and hopefully catch up with him once he does decide to give up. And he will ultimately decide to either bail on foot, dump the vehicle, run into a friend's house or something like that. We'll see what he decides to do. There really is no predicting situations like this, but hopefully this comes to one of the more peaceful resolutions. With this driving, though, it's so unpredictable, you just never know how this is going to wind up.
All right, and we're hoping this doesn't end with an accident. We're going to continue our coverage, on ABC7.com. We're about to join World News Tonight with David Muir, so we invite you to stick around with us, both either on the network news on ABC7 or to continue our coverage of this pursuit on ABC7.com. He's on Telfair Avenue. This is where he stopped earlier.
Same block.
Same block. All right, we're just a few seconds away from World News Tonight. So we are
same
going
block,
to...
same folks in the front
looks
yard,
like he's
and there he
getting out.
goes, getting out of the vehicle.
He's getting
giving
out.
it up.
For continuing coverage, go to ABC7.com for the end of this pursuit. In the meantime, ABC World News Tonight is next on ABC7.
And we continue our coverage here on ABC7.com of a pursuit suspect who has just gotten out of his car and is now in this neighborhood on Telfair Avenue in Pacoima. And we are waiting for LAPD units to show up because they were in tracking mode and not in pursuit mode in an effort to bring the speeds down. They're not immediately in this neighborhood. You can see there are a lot of people out, though. And fortunately, the suspect doesn't seem to be messing with these people. He is simply trying to perhaps blend in, get out of this area. Chris Christie is over at Chris. I can't see him right now. We've got these trees in the way.
There, he's giving it up. He now has his hands up. There's an LAPD unit right behind the vehicle where he stopped. He basically ended up right back in front of that home that he paused in front of earlier in the in our newscast. And at one point he was going to pop the door and get out, but he decided to extend the joyride a little longer, ending up right back to where he started here. And now LAPD about to take this suspect into custody after what was nothing less than a frightening pursuit at times. But the pattern was established. They went in and out of pursuit mode, in and out of tracking mode, monitoring his behavior, and when things got too dangerous, they had no choice but to pull off, knowing that ultimately this would hopefully be the conclusion. Hopefully he would just decide to give up, maybe dump the vehicle and run for it, or maybe just give himself up like he is right here. Again, a wanted parolee at large, now heading off to jail on a Monday night. May very well be. In fact, those are the same folks who were in their front yard watching him the first time he passed through here. Now you see a number of people with their cell phones out, good for at least 10 or 20 new followers per phone. You got to imagine they are sharing this with their friends, and we have seen this with a lot of these pursuits. The minute they hear about a pursuit in the neighborhood, you start seeing the cell phones come out. That's the last thing that LAPD wants to see, because it just introduces more pedestrians. And look at this, even in this situation, they've got to make gunpoint, and God God forbid they had to use force for whatever reason, if this person did something stupid, you've got pedestrians, whether they're friends or family, whoever these folks may be, who are really, I mean, look at the distance there. I mean, you have this one woman in the street there who's just feet away from the suspect where guns are drawn, aimed at his direction, but they have to watch out for crossfire and so many other factors to consider. Looks like this suspect, thankfully, is giving himself up. Look at this woman, though. She is literally walking right into the direction of those guns. So, and then this is what I'm talking about. Absolutely. Clear the vehicle.
It's clear. Their guns are now holstered. They're taking this guy into custody, and that is that.
That'll do it.
All right, Chris Christie, we thank you for your excellent coverage, as always, following this police pursuit that ended on surface streets in Pacoima, Telfair Avenue. No reports of anyone being injured. We'll have much more on this coming up tonight on KDOC TV at 7 o'clock. Eyewitness News, LA's only live local newscast at 7 p.m. And we'll be back, Mark Brown and myself, and maybe Chris Christie if there's breaking news on Eyewitness News at 11. Thanks for watching.